Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Enamine REAL compounds. Today we have a special guest, head of parallel chemistry, Enamine, Dr. Dmytro Radchenko, who will be explaining about real compounds, real space, and all the perspectives of this exciting technology. Let's give another couple minutes to all the folks to join this event. Thank you. Okay, I think new people are joining, and I think we can start now. So as I said, today we are going to be presenting you Enamine's probably the most exciting technology at the moment, real space and real compounds. And today's guest, Dr. Dmytro Radchenko, head of parallel chemistry at Enamine, will be explaining the history of the technology, some milestones, and the principles behind its design, and how to collaborate with Enamine on this product. So this series of webinars is brought to you by Enamine. We host webinars regularly on the different subjects in medicinal chemistry, organic synthesis, and drug design. And please subscribe to our newsletter to stay in the loop for new announcements, product launches, and company news. You can find a newsletter on our website, www.enamine.net. Just a couple of words about Enamine. We are the world's premier supplier of building blocks and screen libraries for drug discovery community. We are a scientifically driven chemical company established more than 3 decades ago. And currently, the company has more than 650 chemists working in many labs to produce the compounds and ship them globally. Currently, Enamine, so basically what makes Enamine the world's largest supplier of building blocks in screen compounds is the unparalleled and exciting chemical background. Basically, the stock of building blocks is currently amounts to more than 280,000 compounds in multi-gram amounts, and more than 2,800,000 screen compounds in milligram amounts in stocks in Ukraine, in the United States, and in Europe. But the most exciting part of this is the access to 36 billion real compounds, which is the largest synthetically accessible chemical space in the world. The deliverability of the compounds is more than 80% success rate within just 3-4 weeks. Of course, Enamine offers integrated services, including biology services, which are represented by our biology arm, Bienta. So just a brief remark about real space, why you should care about this product. It's it stands separately from all the products that our company is offering, because in my opinion, it is a product that creates communities around it. Over the last couple of years, there has been probably hundreds of high-profile articles exploring various ways to search and explore this huge chemical space, with the idea of finding new creative ideas, new hits, new unexplored space for drug design, hit discovery. For example, recently Recursion conducted a huge screen against almost 80,000 protein pockets, and they have basically screened 36 billion molecules, generating 2.8 quadrillion of data points. This is huge effort, and we're excited about the future of this project. In many other articles, various academic labs and commercial companies are developing tools to explore this space. And basically, this space represents kind of playing ground for the community of machine learning practitioners, cheminformaticians, and many other technology folks as well. And reflecting on the growing role of real space and drug discovery community, I can say that it touches all these various types of players, starting from top tier pharma and biotech companies, leading biotech companies who may explore the space for their drug discovery programs. Of course, various academic labs, and also for the most part, this space is a big data project, and so it is very attractive to the growing pharma AI community, where we already partner with various startups and larger companies in an attempt to bring new level of chemical ideation to drug discovery community. Very importantly, as this space grows and the technology requirements grow with it, I think we will be partnering with technology providers to run the large-scale computational projects and to enable the infrastructure which is needed to conduct such large-scale projects. And so with that, I'd like to pass the floor to my colleague, Dmytro Radchenko, to actually delve deeper into the technology behind this huge chemical resource and all the ways you can get value out of collaboration with Enamine and boosting your own drug discovery programs, cheminformatic programs, and other things. So Dmytro, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Henrik, for the introduction. Let me now share the screen. Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar. Today I would like to tell you about the Enamine REAL compounds and REAL concept in general. So I would like to start with a bit of history here. In the early days of Enamine, the company was mainly focused on the synthesis and then selling the screening compounds. And at that time, it was needed to have a reliable source of screening compounds. And the paramount factor which we had is the synthesability. So the compound should be really synthesizable. And that's basic was an idea to create a real as a synthesizable space. And I would like to mention here two men who worked hard and was pioneers in making the real library. The first one is Sergei Pipko, who more than 20 years ago made some technical work to store information about the reagents and also perform enumeration and this kind of work. And what he also did is he created a workflow how to run the synthesis of those compounds in a very cost-efficient manner. And I'll talk about this workflow a little bit later. And the other man is Andrei Bogolyubsky, who is a person who, for many years, probably more than 20 years, was responsible for the update of the REAL library and added new reagents which we obtained from stock and put in those reagents in the REAL. And how he did it is he just looked at the reagents and he did manually check and select reactions, which reactions should be used for which reagents. So now we, of course, use more computer-assisted semi-automated way to add the new reagent to reactions. And what else changed is the scale. So the scale decreased almost tenfold, and also the purification. Over the years, we changed it, the way how we purify this compound several times, and now we only use explosive purification for all our real compounds. Okay, so now after this historical introduction, I would like to give you a formal definition of real, and you probably know that it's an acronym for readily accessible. But what's more important is that it is the way how we create a library in order to maximize the synthesis success rate. So this is the main and the first idea which we had in mind. And actually this maximization of the success, it was a pragmatic decision, because we at Enamine have this model, business model, when we get payment only after we send the compound. So if the success rate of the synthesis is low, that means that we do the same work for less money, and we obviously don't want it. So it was a pragmatic decision from the beginning. And technically, what we did when we created a REAL is we took dozens of validated high-performance reactions, which is well established, and combined them with stock available building blocks. And so the enumerated virtual space was created in that way. But that's actually was just the beginning. And what happened next is just experimentation. And we did a lot of synthesis with this real compounds. And as an example, I can tell you that at the moment we have about 4 millions of compounds in stock, and most of them are real compounds produced by Pearl Chemistry Department. And here on the chart, you can see also the data. It's a number of syntheses on this axis, as a number of syntheses performed each month over the last 5 years. And so you can see that the throughput is very high. So we run a lot of synthesis, and that's probably the second important point when we speak about the REAL. The first is the feasibility, and the second one is the throughput. So we can make a lot of the compounds every month. Because of that, we collect a lot of statistics about our reagents, about our reactions, and we were able to polish our understanding of the reaction scope delimitation. And also we know very well our reagents. We actually developed in-house, let's say, reactivity tags, and we put those tags on reagents. So finely tune which reagents should react with which. Yeah, and by doing so, we now have a success rate for the random selection from REAL library of more than 80%. Okay, so when we at Enamine telling about the chemistry which we use, we often use term validated chemistry, and that's because we actually do a lot of work to validate the reactions which we before we include them in the REAL. And one example is here, which I want to show you. That's a reaction which we included in the last release of REAL, and that's basically 3-component reaction with 2 amines and a related sulfur chlorides, and it is quite huge. You can see this; it's more than 1 billion of structures in it. What's important is that to validate it, And to test it, we've done more than 2,000 syntheses before even we introduce it to the public. And that's actually a great question. What did we check? We didn't check the theoretical possibility that the bench chemists can run this reaction. What we actually checked is our workflow. I mean, our internal workflow and the way how we do the synthesis. How the people in the lab, whether they can deal with this chemistry, whether the solvents are dry enough, and all those small bits of work which have to be done to obtain the final compound. This is what we check actually. Yeah, and in terms of the reagents, we of course check their performance, which is measured by yield and success rate. And an example here, you see two related sulfur-fluorides, which we checked for this reaction, and one of which have very low success rate, on 36%, and the other one almost 80%. And obviously, only the second one was included in this reaction. Yeah. So now I also would like to say that another important factor is the availability of the reagents from stock, and Enamine has a huge collection of different reagents, and without it, it would be hard to imagine the real. So, for example, if years ago we created the virtual library based on the non-stock available reagents, which you can buy from on the market, then the costs of running all those syntheses would be so high, and it would be prohibitive high, and the whole concept won't just make, so you won't be able to run all the synthesis, collect data, and so on. So in terms of reagent classes, you see here the number of building blocks which have in stock. Here's the numbers, and we have a lot of amines in this. It's probably all vendors now have the most these classes, and that's why we have a lot of amines in real actually. But we also have other well-represented classes like aryl halides for relation, alkyl halides for alkylation, carbonyl compounds for deoxygenation, and so on. So we have a really huge number of building blocks suitable for different kind of chemistries. Yeah. So, and yeah, to summarize this section, I can say that the key features which was introduced to the reals from the beginning is the feasibility of the synthesis, cost efficiency, and of course the high throughput, which allows us to get a lot of information and polish and increase the success rate. Okay. Now let's move to the next section, where I would like to discuss the terms real database, real space, and show some real reactions. First of all, we have two public products which we share with the clients. It's real database and real space. And let's start with the first one. So the predecessor of real database is virtual library of screen compounds without actually any name, but with the same idea behind it as in real. The term real database was first appeared in our paper in 2007, and it's basically real database, basically a text file where we have a structure and in the form of smiles, also catalog ID, and optional a bunch of physical chemical calculated parameters. And this files was huge even in 2007. It contains tens of millions of structures, and sometimes it was a problem to work with such a huge file for our clients, but also for us. And so we decided that we need to filter those compounds. And the filters which we applied is filtering by molar weight and by lipophilicity, having the maximum cutoff. Initially, we used Lipinski-like criteria, but then switched to lead-like criteria, and we use those filters now as well. Yeah, so and then important year for real was 2018, when we introduced several three-component reactions to the space, and it may look like not something very impressive, but in fact it was like a change from 2D, 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, and it has a very huge impact on the whole real library, and I'll show you later the examples. Yeah, and finally, after that, the computer become more and more fast, and so we allowed a real database to grow to the current 6 billions of the structures. Here is actually the graph showing the size of real database. Since 2004, this is the earliest date which I found. And you can see that why year 2018 is important, because after that, the number of compounds in real started to grow very, very fast. So now moving to the real space, I can say that the story is much shorter, and it started in 2018 with this program called Real Space Navigator. And it was a program created by BioSolve IT, a software company BioSolve IT, together with Enamine. To make it happen, the Enamine provides the information how to enumerate the structure, the symptom data, and also reaction data, all those rules. And BioSolve IT wrote the program itself and also implemented its searching algorithm how to search the space. And the first release of this program contains information about 800 millions of the structures, but the same year, 2018, there was an update, and it contained information about 4 billions of the structures. Yeah, and now they replaced it. I mean, BioSolve replaced it with another program called Infinity, which also allowed you to search space files, but not only real, but from space files from other vendors as well. You probably know it. But what's great about this program is its size. So it was like 20 megabytes in size, and it could run on a normal PC, and it was a huge change between those possibilities which you had with real database, where you have some very, very powerful PC to run the search in the database. Okay, so after the story, it's probably easier for me to give you a definition of what is real space. My definition of real space is that it's a fragment-based set of rules which can be used to search and generate real compounds. And an important part here is this set of rules. So the real space do not contain any enumerated structure. It's just the rules how to do that. Okay. And this is the graph showing the size of real space releases over the years since 2018. And no surprises here, it's growing. But to get understanding why it's growing, why the real database is also growing, you should probably look at the formula, what is real compounds, and that's just reagents in a simpler way. It's reagents multiplied by reactions. So let's start with the reagents and see how new reagents impact the size of real. So this is a somewhat complicated chart. Here in the blue bars, you have a number of new reagents in enamine stock over the years, and here is the axis for it. And in red line here, you have the total number of reagents in enamine stock, and here is you have another axis for that. And as you can see, the total number, so we produce new building blocks each year, and the total number of reagents is growing, but quite steadily, so it's like a linear growth now. And the impact which this reagent have on the real size is also the growth, but a steady growth without some explosive growth. Yeah. On the other hand, if we look at the impact of new reactions, which we add to the real, there is possibility for explosive growth here. And as an example, I would like to show you this reaction which we introduced in 2018, and it's basically a three-component double amidation reaction, and it's really huge. So it's the biggest reaction which we had in real until the last release. When we introduced it in 2018, we actually had to change our filtering process a bit so that we have a reaction level filtering, and because we didn't want to have real to be overwhelmed with those products, so we started filter not only by physical chemical properties but by the reaction also. Yeah, and it looks great. So huge chemical space can be achieved with it, but if you compare it with a simple two-component amidation, you can see that the size of this molecules are much bigger. And so drawback of this reaction is that if you, let's say, take a two-component reaction, 80% of those molecules generated by this reaction have less than 500 Daltons molar weight, while only 50% of the structures obtained by this reaction have less than 500 Daltons. And the same trend can be observed for another cutoff. Yeah, and so there is some pros and cons in introduction of new components to the reactions, and probably 3 is the optimal number here. Yeah, and to summarize this section, I would say that while the gradual growth of real library can be done by just increasing the number of reagents used for that, but the growth which we experienced in the last 5 years was possible only because we introduced new reactions. Okay, so now let's move to the next section, and it's about our the last update, which should be released maybe in a month or probably this month. It's almost ready, let's say. So now with this update, we will have 166 reactions in total, and most of them are two-component reactions. What changed from the last release is we added 8 new reactions, and most of them 3-component, and 4 reactions which have more than 1 billion of the molecules of the structures in it. We also removed 21 reactions from real. These are reactions which are really small, and often they include some medicament-friendly functionality in the product. And this removal is done as a part of the process where we aim to clean the real from not really combinatorial reactions, which were included in that for several reasons some time ago. And here is the examples of those removed reactions. So here on the left, you see reactions which are really small. It's 1 component or just having a very rare building blocks. So the space defined by it's really small. And on the right, you see the also small reaction, but which also contains some friendly functionality like divalent sulfur, which is not very popular among chemists. Yeah, I almost forgot. What's important about removed reaction is that you still can order compounds obtained by them. So when we remove a reaction from real, we just put in so-called legacy real, and this is a space which internally we treat it like real. I mean, so we can run the synthesis, and when asked for the compound, we'll give a quote like it's in real. The only difference is that we are not going to publish them in new releases, but you still can obtain those compounds. They are not we still support you if you need that. Okay, so yeah, and here is an example of reactions which we added in the last release, and these three reactions to the left is they are quite big. These two have more than 1 billion. And what's important about it is that they do not contain amide bond. And that's actually, we are reacting here to the feedback from our clients, which expresses wishes to have more products without amide bond. So we hear your voices, yeah. And actually, this reaction was developed after this request. And this reaction on the top right does contain, the product contains amide bond. And what's special about it is that it's the biggest reaction in real at the moment, simply because it's double amidation. And I told you that we have a lot of amine and acid, and it has amine, and we have more amine than acids. So this reaction is just huge. So if you just calculate this number of symptoms we have here and multiply them, you get an awesome number of structures. Okay, so now let's move to the next section, where I would like to touch some points about frequently asked question from our clients. So this question which often arise about real, so I decided to answer them straight away. And the first one, the first topic would be about turnaround time. So the time needed to run the synthesis. If you have experience in organic chemistry and work in the lab, for example, you would probably say that run one-pot synthesis like is shown here. You will need a day to run the synthesis and maybe 1 to 2 days to do the HPLC purification, evaporation, analysis, and put compound in stock. And that's probably true. It's true if you do the whole synthesis yourself, or some bench chemists doing this. It, of course, would be much more expensive compared to the real, but it's possible. But it's not how we do it at Enamine. So we use a different workflow. How we do it? We have different people, so we kind of separate the process of the synthesis into pieces, and we have a different people responsible for different part of the synthesis. So this is basically a conveyor which we use for the synthesis. But unlike the normal conveyor, all our products are different molecules, so it's a bit more complicated. And for this example, which we did just this year, I summarize here in the table all operations which were performed during the synthesis, in the process of synthesis. And here is a summary. So there is 51 events here, and 25 different employees done something to the synthesis. And by event, I mean when you just take the vial and scan it with a scanner and do something with that. So that's an event. And if you look at this table, it's probably not quite surprising that it took us 3 days for the synthesis to go to HPLC department for the purification, and 10 days and business days together for the compounds to appear in stock. So that's 2 weeks, and actually it's 2 weeks in the case when everything works okay. But sometimes the synthesis just don't work. So you need to rerun the synthesis or rerun the purification, and it can even further increase the time needed to run the synthesis. And that may be a problem for our client when you have to run a lot of time for the synthesis. For example, if you have if you need to synthesize 100 compounds from real, then the effective time needed for the synthesis of the whole library is the time needed to obtain the last vial, the last synthesis, the longest synthesis. Yeah, so and as I told, it may be a problem, this waiting time. What I suggest here is to have an extra selection. So to select 150 molecules and do the 1 round of synthesis, and do not do this repurification and resynthesis, and only send what we obtained from the first run. And another option could be a partial delivery. So if we deliver compounds which obtain after 3 weeks, then the most of the compounds will be in it. So it also solves this problem. Yeah, okay. Let's move to the next. Another big question from our clients is about price. That's very important. Yeah, and there are many factors. I will go one by one about it. And in general, the price for, the real compounds are affordable. So most of the compounds which you synthesize, and the price for them is between 100 to 200 US dollars, something like that. Most, not all. What have a very high impact on the price is how hard for us to obtain those compounds. So the general trend here is the more harder for us to get those compounds, the more expensive the synthesis will be. And probably the most important factor is ordered amount. We typically have orders of 1 to 10 milligrams of real compounds. If we need to obtain more material, it would be harder for us. We need to put extra work here. And also important factor here is number of compounds ordered. For example, if you have 1,000 of structures or 5,000 of structures in the order, then you'll get a discount. So we have a discount for bulk orders, and the price per compound would be less. And next goes is chemistry complexity. How hard for us to make this chemistry, and also product stability. And these factors include the base price of the real compounds. So we have like flat price, but there are two flat prices in real. One we call S real or simple real, and the other one is M real or multi-step real. And the second is 50% more expensive than the first. So if the chemistry is hard, or there is problems with purification or stability, then the base price would be higher. And also the reporting, if you need to write the final report with all protocols, how we purify compounds, so all the information, it would be extra work from our side. Another big block of the factors is QC-related factors. So our typical purity, which we suggest, is 90% vial CMS. But you can also do 95%. It will be harder for us, but it's possible. And also regarding the measurement of protein NMR spectra, we can measure protein NMR for up to 100%, but it requires more material, and again, it's more hard for us, and so the compounds will be more expensive. You also can run a custom CMS method, for example, the long one, or some proprietary method, but it also needs some extra effort from outside. Great. So next big factor is exclusivity. Let's call it that. And here I first would like to say that we have a lot of had in the past, and now had a lot of project where which is basically stock collection enhancement programs. Internally, when we do it by ourselves, or external when our other clients want to enhance their collection. And typically for those type of programs, it's not a problem for client if we synthesize some compound from real, send the material to the client, and then put the remainings, if any, in our stock catalog, so that other client can also buy. Yeah, so it often happens, but sometimes there is other clients which do not want to allow other clients to see compound in our stock catalog, and they want to kind of hide their interest in a particular real compound or set of compounds. For those, we have these two options. The first option we call it batch ownership, which means that if you apply it to some synthesis of real compounds, then the whole synthesized material obtained during the synthesis would belong to the client. So that's basically a tag on the vial, where is the mark that this vial belongs to the client. And even if you obtain more than was requested initially, you just took the whole vial and sent it to the client. And we won't have anything to sell to other people. Yeah, and the other option is, I call it public stock catalog removal, and we use it when our clients want to go further in protecting their interest, and it is, again, it's a tag which you can put this time on the structure, and even if the structure would be obtained in a separate file from the third-party order, or we made it internally, independently, it still won't appear in our stock catalog. So it's like a black mark. So it won't appear for some period of time. It won't appear in our stock catalog, never. So no chances. Yeah, and finally, I should tell you about the question which we often had: if it's possible to remove something from the real, and it's not possible. So I mean, technically, it's not possible. Even if you would like to do so, now we have this option to access real compounds as a real space, and I already told you. And real space do not contain any enumerated structure, so you cannot remove some enumerated structure because there are no enumerated structures. That's just the rules. So nothing can be deleted from the real space. Okay, and finally, the last factor is cost of the reagents. So the general idea here is, if you have very costly reagents in stock and we use it for the synthesis, then the base price, which I mentioned previously here, would be also higher. So it will be not S real, but M real, because of the cost of the reagents. Okay, so that's probably always the price. And the last topic about the expressions is the stereochemistry, which I'd like to mention. And here I would say that we do support extended stereochemistry notation, this or and notation. And the problem which we have with stereochemistry, and why I bring in this question here, is that sometimes we have a racemic structure in the real database, and then it goes to our client. The client make a virtual screening from it, generates 3D coordinates, and send us back the structure with a pure enantiomer, and we just don't have it because well, we don't have it. And that may be a problem, and what I suggest here is to pay attention to those stereochemistry details, and also to provide us with a catalog ID of the structures, so we can understand what was initially those structures, and to give you some note about it, so the mouse doesn't correlate with the catalog ID. And the stereochemistry of the final compounds, of course, defined by the reagents which we have in the reaction. And for example, if you have the 3-component reactions and we have 3 reagents with 3 racemic reagents, let's say, then we may end up in a situation that we have 4 pairs of enantiomers, and after purification we may isolate 1 or 2 diastereomers without even knowing which one we isolated actually. And that's a situation which we do not like much. We would like to get rid of it. And in fact, for filter and real database, we also use filter to remove all those compounds with a lot of undefined stereochemistry. For real space, it's not possible. It should be a part of the enumerating software. Yeah, but for real database, we do that. And finally, here I would like to give you an example of the codes, catalog IDs, which we use. The first one is this Z code, which we typically use for our stock screening compounds. And there's also a real database specific PV codes. And finally, there is a RSN codes. We call it RSN internally because it first was generated by Real Space Navigator. Yeah, and in the upcoming release of Real database, we decided to switch to use only RSN codes and to have this the same code for different products. I mean, for the Real Space and Real database, we now will have the same code. It will be RSN code. Okay, so Now let's move to the next section, and it's about fragment space and real space in particular. First of all, about real space, which I already mentioned, I should say that it's just a part of the much bigger enamine virtual space, and therefore it is described by only subset of all our available reactions, and it uses only subset of the reagents which you have in stock. Another space is legacy real space. I mentioned that reaction which excluded from real goes here, and for a few years probably. And we also have this space, I call it not anymore real, and it contains reactions which fails to make it to the real. For example, reactions which we tested, but which gave us low success rate, and it's just not good enough to go here. And also they contain reactions which will, after several years, moved from legacy. They also end up here. And that's a good question, actually, to how to access those spaces, because there are no enumerated structures. And one of the default option, I would say, is a program I mentioned already from Biosolve company, is Infinity program, which uses its own format for file format for the space. It's .space file, which can download it from their website. And it's fragment-based space, non-enumerated. The last release contains 36 billion of the structures in it, and it supports kind of similarity and substructure searches. It uses own different format of storing this data, and those rules how to make the final molecules. I mean, it's different from our internal format, and it also uses a subset of reactions, so the number of reactions is less, the number of reagents is also less, and so it's much smaller than the space we have internally, real space which we have internally. Yeah, so, and there's actually several, maybe even I can say many different options how you can work with those spaces, but the only one which I would like to mention here is this less synthesis approach, and it's not about actually the searching substructure similarity, searching of the compound. That's the approach how you can do the virtual screening of the compounds using this fragment space. And the authors, there's a paper, and you can probably should read it if you're interested. What author did is they uses the fragment-based nature of real space to do really efficient virtual screening, and the performance of this screening is orders of magnitude higher than just a normal performance when you screen all the compounds. So they just screen a part of the space. Okay, so that's probably almost all. I would like now to comment a bit about my view about the future of the real and where I'm going here. And first of all, I should say that I believe the interest in real will increase. And I made this small chart here, and I just searched for the keyword enamine REAL in Google Scholar. And also, it's not precise metric, but you can see the idea that it's growing. And I believe the interest to the real and actually other competitors, also virtual spaces, ultra large virtual spaces, the interest will stay high. And in terms of competition, I can say that enamine real library is well positioned as a reliable, affordable, and synthesizable source of screening compounds. So I also think that there will be more improvement in the use of real space, as it allows you to search a really enormous chemical space. In terms of the impact of AI and machine learning, which is very, very popular now, so everyone do that. I believe the company would spend more and more resources on better selecting the molecule using all these algorithms. And I mean, in a very fantastic, actually, case, the company may spend a lot of resources to select better select the compounds, then select only one molecule, synthesize it, and that's a drug. That's all. But I don't believe we'll ever will go thus far. So I believe we will stop somewhere. But we clearly see the trend which is moving in that directions. And that may be a problem actually for enamine, because we sell screen compounds, and if you need less screen compounds, it could be a problem for us, especially when we talk about sharing the real reaction data, including the symptom data, reaction data, all those rules. You will need to recreate real on your end. So there is no guarantee if we share those reactions that we will get more compounds in our orders. And actually now we are revisiting the policy, how we can share those data, and we have an internal discussion about it, and probably we'll get to some solution quite soon. Finally, I would like to say that we also going to pay attention to these spaces and those reactions I mentioned, which are not part of the real, because they just don't get to it, but they still can be used by bench chemists, for example, to run the synthesis. Of course, the compounds from those spaces would be more expensive because it's bench chemists. But still, if we are moving toward workflow when we better select the compounds and order less compounds, it's probably it still could be of interest in those spaces. And another custom space which we think of as a space designed around not our stock available building blocks, but from some custom selection of building block over the whole market. So it's technically that's possible and not that hard actually with our experience of creation of the real database. And again, it would cost more because you need some compound to buy some compounds, and there may be a logistics problem. But if you see the interest from the market, you may also go in that direction as well. Okay, so yeah, the last most important slide here. So this is my group at Enamine, this management team, chemistry management team at Enamine. These people are working on the update of the real library and adding new reaction reagents and so on. And I would like to thank them, and also these people from Enamine, which actually here is only head of departments and head of groups, which are running the chemistries, but there are much more people in the lab who is working in the lab and running the chemistry and doing those synthesis. And I would like to also thank them. And finally, I would like to thank SchemSpace and especially Euromeros for the efforts for the preparation of this public releases of real database and real space, which they do in the last couple of years, and also for their efforts in popularization of the real compounds. And of course, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dmytro. It was a fantastic presentation, and we are now coming to the part where we can answer all the questions. We have a lot of questions. Actually, Dmytro already have done a great job and proactively answering many questions, but I will read anyway all the questions, and if needed, let's just remind. So can you please share the slides afterwards? That's the first question.
Probably yes. Why not? I mean,
Okay, we will. So yeah, I think we will follow up on that with all the webinar attendees and share the recording. Certainly, we will be able to share recordings with everyone who have been here and also with the folks who registered but did not attend. So please feel free to request those materials. So another question, can I get all structures of the real space by downloading files like the real database? Well, obviously not, but yeah.
No, you can't. I mean, the size of real, I mean, the compounds which can be enumerated using the real, I mean, which real space you mean? If you are telling about 36 billions, yes, you can get it. It's so you can drop out the message. I mean, we have them enumerated. It's not on our website because it's so huge, but it is available. If you are talking about the whole, I mean, not the smaller version, not the Barcelona version of space, then not. It's just so big you won't be able to work with it.
Okay. Another question from Joseph Peretti. I missed the point about small versus large reactions.
The small reactions, it's reaction which can be used to enumerate a small subset. I mean, so if you have a like reaction when Book protection of the amine, that's technically a reaction, but you will get like 50,000 of the structure from that because we have about 50,000 amines in stock. No, maybe more, but not too much. And so you'll get 50,000 products. It's small reaction. If you had amidation of amines plus acids, then you multiply those 50,000 amines by 30,000 acids, and you have big reactions. So that's the difference.
Okay, thanks. Another question is pretty interesting. How to safeguard that custom-made non-real compounds for one client do not end up in real, which is ordered by another client on a non-exclusive basis, and in the end become available in your in-stock catalog?
Yeah, so that's the option which I mentioned is public stock catalog removal. So that's an option for removal of the structures from our stock catalog, even if the compound would be ordered by the third party, it won't be shown in our stock. So no, even if you buy it from somewhere, so it can be available from the market. We can buy it and it still won't appear in our stock, because it's like a tag in our internal system which do not allow these compounds to appear in stock catalog. Usually we apply this option only for real compounds. I mean, this example I just dropped, buying some compound of the market, we won't put this mark on it because it's already on the market. No sense to market as not available from stock catalog. But for real, that's a normal practice, and you can use this approach.
Okay, I think another one is related to that. I just read and maybe you reiterate. Although real compounds cannot be blocked from being listed since they are not enumerated, can real compounds be exclusively licensed?
I actually don't understand the question. So exclusively licensed it. So I just don't get it. So maybe Andrew, you know what's the question, but any details maybe.
No, we don't have. This was from anonymous attendees. So whoever asked this, I advise to just follow up with the question through our email, and we will deliver the answer later after the webinar. So just to clarify, do we require a paid Biosolve AT license to access the real space with Infinity? That's another question from.
Probably yes. So the software companies, they sell software, and to use Infinity to search the real space, yeah, you need the license for this program for Infinity. Yeah. but I'm not an expert in this program. I don't even have it installed on my computer, so I don't have those licenses, because we internally use as a way to search our real. So we have our internal resources. Yeah, but unfortunately, they're not available to everyone. So maybe we'll try to share it in the future, and I have such plans. But at the moment, yeah, you have to buy the license.
So Dmitry, you have exclusive power that nobody in the world has. That's great.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Another question: do you also share the synthetic route and related details for the compounds that we would order for purchasing? I believe it's about reporting.
If you need it. So that's obviously a part of the final report which we can provide. So we can provide this written docx report, then you have all the procedures very detailed. We can also provide you with this short table, Excel table with just tabular data, then you have all the reagents how we made it. If you are not interested in the reports or compounds which you didn't order, then we typically do not provide it. So we don't have not that we can't, but we don't have this kind of service of providing this information. Again, internally, I have the resource to see the route to any compounds in real, and I can say the same. So in the future, I have actually plans to share this tool to anyone, so they could just put the smiles and a search line and see how we internally are going to make those compounds. But at the moment, it's not yet released. So at the moment, you have to buy compound and ask for a report.
I think it makes sense. Another question, I think you, Dmitry, already mentioned that, but could you please comment on whether we can access the most updated version of REAL on any other software except by Solvit, or it's only one option?
So actually, we had a request, in previous, we have now, request from some clients which wanted to get the knowledge how we make real. So basically, those symptoms rules, so those rules. And I also addressed this question in my comments on the end of the presentation, because that's a threat for us. So we need to understand how we are going to go here. And it's not only my decision about sharing this decision, which is done on the high level of the company. We need to understand how we will tackle with this request. It's a hard question. So you can ask, but at the moment, we won't give you those rules and explain how you create the real database on your computer, for example. But I believe sooner or later we'll have the answer for this question more acceptable.
I think this is a strategic priority for the company, for Enamine, to make this happen, maybe. Okay, anyway, another question again from the anonymous subscriber. Could you please better elaborate the difference between the real database 6 billion compounds and the real space 36 billion? I guess it's just repeating the question, but
so the difference between the real database is that real database is a textual file which contains like a smiles file. It contains this smile string, catalog ID, and bunch of these chemical calculated parameters. You don't need them. While real space is just rules how to create a space, no enumerated structure at all, and that's the rules how to make those compounds. That's the difference. And in the last releases, we actually had the pretty weird situation when some of the compound from real database, I mean, it's big real database, extended version for 35 billions, wasn't present in the real space, and the opposite. That's because of the filtering issues. With this new release, which I will going to be in a month, we will do this as a real database would be fully covered by the real space. It will contain one another. Yeah, but the difference between database and space is just, as I mentioned, those enumerated and these are not.
We have two more questions, and that's pretty much wraps it up. What is the range of price for 10 milligram of products and general delivery time for this product?
Well, I don't know. I need to check this. I mean, we have a calculator which, when you put I mean, there's a lot of factors I mentioned on the slide with the prices, and you just fill it, everything, and get the final results. And it's a pretty complicated formula which I actually invented some time ago. I don't know. Draw up a letter, and the guys from sales department will calculate it for you.
Fair point. Fair point. And final question, I think it's to our legal department actually, but I'm not sure you are going to be able to comment, but just if you want, can you please elaborate on the legal status of the library? Can one reuse it, publish derivative of it with proper referencing of the source, of course?
I mean, it's okay for publishing, for using it for scientific in scientific publication. So we had a lot of such, and I actually showed you this Google Scholar search about Enamine REAL, and many scientists do this. Regarding usage of it for some commercial sources, I don't know. I probably also should to consult with legals. Probably it's okay to use real database because it's on our website. And maybe on our website there is some note on the bottom, and I never read it actually. So unfortunately, I can't give you a 100% answer here.
Neither do I read small text, and
yeah,
it's too much small text these days.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dmytro. It was fantastic presentation, very nice questions. Thanks everyone for the questions. I just want to last final bit of information here. We have a very good website with all the products pretty much explained in many details with delivery information. And also you can, particularly pertaining to this webinar, you can find information about real compounds and essentially all the quick facts, different sub-products like real database, real space, real database subsets, and online search, which is, again, a very useful tool nowadays. So the online search is done on the Enamine store. And by the way, we have a new version, which you can also try. So please feel free to visit our website and just find out more. And as I said, Dmytro will be happy to answer some of the follow-up questions after this webinar if you just write them in the email. So please do that. With that, I'd like to conclude this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dmytro, and all the guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.